Today, we're going to talk about how we communicate with our users through different kinds of messages. And I've been doing this for a while, and I think if you've used software for a while, you've probably come across error messages, information, warnings that made you go, did a human even write these? They can be incredibly hard to understand, they can be misleading, and it's really easy to make fun of them and say, how hard can this be? We've been doing this for what, 50, 60 years? I've been building software in some shape or form for 20-something years. And this is one of the most interesting things I've come across during my career, because I've seen the changes. And I want to talk about why it actually is really, really hard. So why, 2024, do we still get things like this? No error. So I believe the way that we write these messages, they tell a story. They tell a story about how we balance different priorities and different perspectives, maybe. And I want to talk a bit about some of these. So we want our software to be secure, right? We don't want to mistakenly give someone information that they can exploit. But we also want to be really helpful and informative so that we help our users do whatever it is they want to do as smoothly as possible. And if you do 100% of this, you will not get that. But if you go 100% this, you're not going to be secure. So when we talk about guiding our users, there's a lot of things that we tend to do. We tend to implement things like live validation in the front end. We do things like put red frames or red text on things that are wrong. We put the little asterisks on things that are mandatory, because we want users to see what goes wrong as soon as possible. And all of these things can be really good, but they will also be really helpful if you want to exploit your system. So you've entered the wrong email address or password is maybe good, but which one? But you really don't want to tell which one, because that can be exploited. So you can't do this perfectly. You have to choose, you have to balance. And then there's also, I mean, we don't want to be too vague, but we also don't want to be too detailed, because we want our messages to be helpful. We want to tell the users what they need to know, but we don't want to overload them with too much information. Because if you have too little information in your messages, you're going to get a lot of calls to customer support. And you're going to get a lot of customers who drop out or leave you because they just don't know how to use your system. But if you give them too much information, you're also going to get a lot of angry calls to customer support, and they're going to potentially leave you. So this is actually dubbed the least helpful error in Windows history. This is not helpful. You have no way of knowing what you did wrong, and you even have no way of knowing how to get away from this. There's nothing to do here for a user. But I also don't think users will find this. I mean, some of us do, because we like information. But research shows that less words is actually more helpful. So the more words you add, the less they will understand. So 8 words seems to be some sort of sweet spot. And if you, I think this is more than 40 words. If you cover more than 40 words, 90% of your users are gonna just, I don't think they will even read it. And then I don't know where you work. I've worked in insurance and finance a lot. We have a very particular way of communicating with our users. We want the language to be very close to the business, which is really good if you happen to be also working in finance. I like money. I don't like finances. So a lot of the words and the terms and the way my colleagues talk, they make no sense to me. It's like they were speaking Greek, and Greek is not a language that I talk. And it's also not very accessible. So the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, they include a lot of different categories around accessibility. So touch could be things like, can I navigate this with a keyboard? Can I tab my way around? Sight might be things like, is my contrast good? Am I using things that can, I find it a bit funny that we always talk about these red text and red frames when red is such a bad color to use. But anyway, it could be contrast. It could be how we write our code. Are we using, there are a lot of accessibility keywords to use. But on my topic, I want to talk about language. While this crisp, very correct business language is good for maybe our super users, it's not good for the general public. It's not accessible. What we need for our messages to be accessible is clear, precise, simple language. So if you want to be accessible, you're going to have to write your messages differently. And then there's also a lot of different other perspectives connected to different technological perspectives that we also need to take into consideration. If performance is the most important thing, then maybe we need to avoid unnecessary traffic, unnecessary I/O operations. But that might mean that we put more code in the front end, and we get a front end that's more complicated than it has to be. So we get complexity. If we have a very microservice architecture with a lot of separation of concerns, we will also have added complexity in the ecosystem. If we prioritize having as many tailored error messages as possible, we will have more code to maintain. So we add complexity. And then you can also look at it from a different perspective, because we have a whole stack where we could choose to put our messages. So if we try to catch everything in the front end, it will probably feel like we're micromanaging our users, and we will, they will understand what they did wrong, but it might also be very annoying to them. And again, I'm from the time when we wanted slim front ends, so it kind of bugs me when we have too much code there. But if you leave everything to the back end or the database or even the outside of our control, it will feel very jarring because you will get the feedback on what you did wrong later in the process. And they might not even understand what went wrong. But as testers, I mean, I can rant about error messages for hours, but why is this relevant to our testers? Because I think we can use information and learning and knowledge about these differences to do better testing, because messages from different parts of the stack look different. So things that are caught in the front end have a very service-minded tone. It's very friendly, it's very helpful. It's kind of, sorry ma'am, you're about to step in a puddle, please don't do that, type of language. And it's very close to the users, so it feels helpful. But if we use too much of this, it can be it feels like someone is watching you and controlling you and micromanaging you. And let's face it, it's really easy to bypass these types of validations. Backend has more of a authoritative, formal, business type of language. And they typically happen when you kind of press a button or move to the next step in a page or something. And it's very close to the business, so you have a lot of business-specific validation here. But you have to transport these problems up to the front end, so you have to at least move it one step through the stack, which means you lose a bit of the context. You need to translate it in the front end, which isn't always easy. So you can have you've entered the wrong email address or password, or it could even, we love these, don't we? Their first name, last name. If we move into some sort of data storage, we have a very technical jargon. You have a very technical talk that is recognizable if you work with databases, but it's gibberish if you don't. This is basically our last line of defense. So this is where we want to make sure that we don't let things into the database where it can cause bigger problems. It's really hard to understand for the typical user. You've lost most of the context, and they can look really, really strange once they come up to the users, because you're showing kind of the symptom, not the root cause. And if you're unlucky, you come across something that's completely out of your control. Oracle decides to shut down in the middle of your whatever it is you're doing. So, because we also need to take into consideration servers and operating systems and network infrastructure, or maybe some external service that you have no control over. So as I said, you can see this as a series of steps that we need to do. And with each step, you need to transport the message upward, because the user is over here. And if you don't catch a problem before over here, you have to transport it through lots of different layers. And I know what an SMTP server is. I'm pretty sure most of my users don't. So as testers, we can learn to decipher this gibberish if we just learn to crack the code. So I'm not going to have time to go into too much detail, but there are like a group of types of errors that is good to know about, so you can read up on them. So we have problems that are connected to availability. Something is down. You have words like unreachable, no response, timeout. And those error messages look in a certain way. And then we have a bunch of problems that are connected to authentication. So maybe you are logged in as a user who doesn't have access right to do whatever it is you want to do. But it could also be problems with cookies or sessions or tokens. So those are good things to learn about. A big one is, of course, bad input of some type. So the user put in the wrong type of date, or just maybe they missed filling out a field. And then unfortunately we also have all of the unhandled problems, all of the things we missed for some reason. Something we did not expect to break, broke. A user would never do that. When I talk about this with people, any type of role, I always get the same question. What's the best practice? And I say, I'm so sorry, there is no best practice. But how do I make it perfect? I'm sorry, there is no perfect. But is there a guideline? I'm like, no, sorry, there is probably 10 guidelines, depending on which perspective you want to look at. Because it's all a matter of choice. And as testers, we can help influence which perspectives to prioritize or lift. And a lot of things will influence that. If you have stakeholders who are really loud, you might prioritize their perspectives. Existing architecture, who's in your team, who's outside of your team, their experience, their taste. Current trends in the industry. For a while, we had security was top of mind, and all of the error messages were really, really critical. And now, I would say we're leaning more towards user experience, so they are friendlier, but also maybe not so secure. So as testers, what we can do is, what are testers the best people in the world at doing? Asking questions. Ask questions, because asking questions will help you see where people are locked in there. This is how we've always done it. We've always prioritized user experience, or we've always prioritized latency. So you can ask questions like, how important is this feature? If it's really, really important, maybe we should spend more time on making tailored messages. If it's really unimportant, maybe it's fine with something generic. How often do we think someone is going to use this? Because if you're going to use it once every blue moon, maybe error messages are kind of unimportant. If it's something they use 10,000 times a day, it's really important. Is it a standard feature where we have to follow a pattern? Or is this something new and unique where we can really test and experiment? Who are our users? And what's the potential profit and cost? So with 48 seconds, I'm going to leave you with a call for action. I want you to start challenging the default. Don't just accept that this is how we do something. If you're, I'm guessing most of you in here are testers, so as testers, are you asking the questions? Are you learning about things that make you ask better questions? Are you stepping outside of your comfort zone so you can help balance those forces? If you're another role, I'm happy to discuss what kind of questions you can ask yourself in those. 6 seconds. Thank you.
Master, that was amazing. And by the time you said thank you, it was 0.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like mic drop, but you don't have a mic to drop,
No,
and I cannot
sorry.
give you this one. Amazing job, amazing job. All right, let's see. How can anyone not love this dress? Honestly, I mean, beautiful. You see, everybody thinks that way. Thank you so much, Sophie. You're awesome. Thank you. Alex, oh hi, so lovely to see you. Hello. All right, be good with this answer because it's Alex. You know, she's the chair. Okay, good. How do you deal with the problem that an issue at a lower level can have multiple reasons and solutions? Stuff like null pointers.
Well, I mean, start with figuring out it's on a lower level, because usually we're not really great at digging that deep. We just see the symptoms. But it's like a root cause analysis. Figure out the root cause, and then multiple reasons. It might look like it has multiple reasons. There's probably several null point problems, not just one. So solve them one by one.
Thank you. All right. Has there been any research on the number of error messages, pop-ups, etc. a user receives per hour before they stop reading them?
So where's Ray?
He's there.
You're not supposed to ask the best question. Probably. I don't know. Fewer than we imagine. I would, yeah. Super users don't read the problems that come up, just as you know.
Okay, what is, and I have so many options how to say that. How do you say that?
Pagan.
Pagan. What is pagan?
It's my internet nickname from 1996.
Thank you. All right. You have 2 gifts, right?
Yes, I have 2 gifts.
What should we do with that? What do you think?
So the idea was to give them to the best question.
Do we have one so far? Is it Ray's?
I mean, I think Alex already have them.
Sure. Wait, there is one more question from Chris.
From Chris.
He already has, so he's out.
So maybe the first person who comes up to me after the talk can get them.
All right, and brings you coffee, no?
Oh, yes, I love coffee.
All right, so I think I'm gonna, is there any more? Do you want to answer this one?
Do we have time?
Yeah, we do have time.
Okay. Would You Risk It is a book and a card deck about, the book is about basically why I wrote the cards, or what the cards is about. And the card deck was created for a workshop with Lisa Crispin, where we wanted to talk about risk in connection with heuristics. And we also wanted to learn more about heuristics, because like we keep hearing this word. And the book expands on the 30 different cards. So there's a card called Allies, and then there's a chapter in the book about what does this mean to me, and a story from my working life to kind of make it more visible what it's about.
I envy the person to get it. Thank you so much for bringing it.
Thank
you
you
so much for this amazing presentation. Big applause, ladies and gentlemen.